Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Depending on where you're from, I would like to wish you a very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you so much for taking the time out and being a part of this session today. The topic of the webinar is applying the MITRE ATT&CK framework for threat detection and response. So the first question you might have in your mind is, why this webinar and how is it going to be beneficial to you? Well, MITRE ATT&CK is a knowledge base of tactics, techniques, and procedures that an adversary might use to compromise an organization. Using this knowledge base, security professionals like yourselves can understand how attackers operate and be better prepared to defend your organizations. This becomes even more critical during the current times when attackers have become very sophisticated. They are constantly looking for new ways to compromise organizations and steal data. Such threats are being seen right now, such as fileless malware, living off the land attacks, and ransomware. And these threats have become very, very common over the last few years. The attackers of today don't even need to download a malicious payload onto a victim's machine anymore. They can run the malware right off of memory and thus make it a fileless malware. Attackers have also started using built-in tools such as PowerShell to compromise Active Directory environments, and this is called living off the land. Apart from this, attackers are also leveraging the fear emanating from current world events to wreak havoc. For example, last year in 2020, many attacks took advantage of the fear of COVID-19. To protect against these new types of attacks, it becomes imperative that security professionals be updated about real-world observations on cybersecurity. Not just being updated about what's happening, security professionals should also be able to emulate adversaries' actions and build attack scenarios, perform behavioral analytics, assess defense gaps, understand the maturity of their security operations center, and enrich their threat intelligence. MITRE ATT&CK can help with all of this. But remember, MITRE ATT&CK is just a framework. It is a framework that enables you to understand the anatomy of an attack. Apart from this, it is also vital that security professionals deploy an effective SIEM solution that uses this framework to derive actionable insights for efficient detection and response. Bringing the MITRE ATT&CK framework into a SIEM solution will make it a whole lot more practical to defend against threats. And that is exactly what we will see in this webinar today. Now, before I go ahead, I would like to make sure that you can see my screen and that you can also hear my voice. So we'll do a quick audio video check. So if you can see my screen properly and you can also hear me loud and clear, could you send me a confirmation or good to go message on chat, please? We'll just take about 10 seconds for this. I'm just looking for a confirmation that everything is fine and you can all hear me loud and clear. My slides are visible. All right, thank you so much. I seem to have got a few confirmations from people. Thank you so much, Paul, Steve. Thank you so much. Thanks for those confirmations. Thanks a lot. So during this webinar, in case the voice or picture quality gets bad at any time, please bring it to my attention using the chat and I'll try to fix it right then and there. Also during this webinar, please keep sending me your questions using the webinar panel. You have an option there to send your questions. At the end, I'll have some time set aside for Q&A. By the way, this webinar is being recorded and you'll receive the recording over email soon. So just give us a couple of days, we'll process the recording and we'll be emailing it to you. Well, I've been speaking for the last 3 minutes and I'm yet to introduce myself. My name is Ram Vaidyanathan and I'm a cybersecurity specialist at ManageEngine. I've been with ManageEngine for the last 6 years now. In my role, I get to research about the latest techniques attackers are using against organizations. And I also get to learn from people like you about the ways in which organizations can stop attackers. People like you also give me a lot of insight about how things are developing in the cybersecurity market. And ManageEngine as a company uses this feedback to develop our security solutions. If you'd like to get in touch with me about anything, once this webinar is over, even if it's just to say hello, my email address is right there on your screen. It's ram.v@manageengine.com. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, I seem to have got a few messages on chat saying that my voice is breaking. Can you all confirm that you can all hear me loud and clear? I just want one more confirmation. All right, thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mark. Okay, so with all of this said, I think it's time to start this webinar. Let's get rolling with the agenda and see what we have in store. So here's the agenda for today. We'll first try to understand the MITRE ATT&CK framework. What are its different components and how do they all come together? We'll then go over tactics identified in this framework. There are 12 tactics that we can discuss here. Next up, we'll talk about techniques. What exactly are techniques and why should you know about them? And what are sub-techniques? Procedures are next in line. What are procedures and how can they help you solve your security challenges? After doing all of this, after talking about tactics, techniques, and procedures, we'll discuss how the MITRE ATT&CK framework is used within a SIEM solution like Managed Engine Log 360, how you can derive actionable insights out of it, and how you can take response actions. So we'll be ending the webinar with that. Anyway, let's start with point number 1 on the agenda. What are the different components of the ATT&CK framework? ATT&CK is a knowledge base or framework of adversarial tactics, techniques, sub-techniques, and procedures based on real-world observations. It stands for Adversarial Tactics, Techniques, and Common Knowledge. So that's the A, T, T, ampersand, C, and K. MITRE first started working on this knowledge base back in 2013. And the very first version of this knowledge base was released in 2015. Usually, every quarter, the framework undergoes updates as new information on cyber attacks becomes available. Now, the greatest thing about this framework is that everybody can contribute to it, including you. If you want to contribute to this, just head on over to their website, to the MITRE ATT&CK website, and there's a section there where you can actually contribute to this framework. So they're looking for more and more information because the objective is to make this framework as comprehensive as possible, and that can only happen if information is shared freely amongst people in the world. So anyways, like it's apparent from the acronym, the framework consists of tactics. In fact, there are 12 different tactics. Each tactic is a higher level technical goal that an adversary wants to achieve. These 12 tactics are listed right here. I'm just going to read this out loud right now. So you've got initial access, execution, persistence, privilege escalation, defense evasion, credential access, discovery, lateral movement, collection, command and control, exfiltration, and then finally impact. Apart from these 12 tactics, ATT&CK has also identified 2 pre-attack tactics. And those are what you see on the screen right now: reconnaissance and resource development. And as you can see, these are pre-attack tactics. They don't really, they're not really a part of the 12 main tactics that you see here. Now, these 2 tactics, they're usually technical goals of attackers even before they launch an attack. So as you can see here in this slide, the very first tactic is reconnaissance, and then the final tactic is impact. Attackers usually go step by step in the order that you see listed here in this slide. Obviously, it's not a given that attackers will try to achieve each and every tactic that you see here. In fact, it may be the desire to get to exfiltration in as few steps as possible. Great, so that's what we have about tactics. We now need to talk about techniques. Techniques are the means by which an attacker achieves a tactic. So while a tactic is all about what they want to do, these are the technical goals, right? So tactic is all about what they want to do. Techniques are about how they will actually do it. For example, reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is the larger tactic which could be achieved through 10 different techniques that you see here. These techniques are right here for you. Just take a look at this. Likewise, you've got resource development, which is the second pre-attack tactic, and it's got 6 different techniques with which you can actually achieve resource development. Initial access has 9 different techniques, all the way to exfiltration, which has 9 different techniques once again. So let's take the example of initial access, which is the very first tactic on this framework. Here are the 9 different techniques by which initial access could be gained by an attacker. One of the techniques to achieve initial access is called phishing, and you see that here. Now, sub-techniques further break down behaviors described by techniques. They describe exactly what an attacker does to accomplish a technique. In a way, a sub-technique is a how behind the how. So you have a tactic called initial access, which happens to be one of the tactics. There are 12 tactics in total. Initial access is the first tactic amongst those 12. And underneath initial access, there are 9 different techniques. These are techniques to achieve initial access. And one of those techniques is called phishing. And that's what we've got highlighted here. Now, a sub-technique basically, wherever it's relevant, divides all of these techniques. So you've got 3 different sub-techniques for phishing. And these are spear phishing attachment, spear phishing link, and spear phishing via service. So likewise, you can also see that there are sub-techniques for supply chain compromise. So compromise software dependencies and development tools, compromise software supply chain, compromise hardware supply chain. So these are sub-techniques for supply chain compromise. And there are 4 sub-techniques for the technique called valid accounts, default accounts, domain accounts, local accounts, and cloud accounts. So do you kind of see how this all comes together? The same thing can actually be done for all of the other 11 techniques, or rather the 11 different tactics of this particular MITRE ATT&CK framework. So that's how it all comes together. Take a look at this. This is the overall MITRE ATT&CK matrix, and you can see all the tactics listed over here on the top. And here are the techniques underneath each of these tactics. And then, like I told you, each of these techniques can then be subdivided into sub-techniques. Okay, so here it is. Take a look at this, but it doesn't really stop here. For each technique and sub-technique, there could be specific implementations that the adversary uses, and these are called procedures. So yes, a procedure describes the instances of real-world applications of a technique. They help you understand the particular examples and instances of use of a technique. For example, we spoke about the sub-technique called spear phishing attachment, right? That comes under phishing. This has several observed procedure examples, and those are listed for you right here. Several groups, these are all threat groups that have been observed around the world. So several groups such as APT1, APT12, there are also groups such as Leviathan, Lazarus group, they've actually used this particular sub-technique. These have actually been observed in the real world. The MITRE ATT&CK framework also identifies threat groups from around the world that are involved in different types of attacks, and that perform different techniques and sub-techniques. So that's what groups are. So let's just head on over to the groups page on the MITRE ATT&CK website. I'll give you a fair idea of what this is all about. So just take a look at this page here. It's pretty comprehensive. If you want further details about a particular group, for example, let's say that we want details about the Lazarus group. We've got that listed right here on this page. So here is the Lazarus group page. Just head on over there, and you'll get to see information about this particular threat group. It is a very, very popular threat group. So you get to see information like where in the world it's actually based. The associated groups can be seen right here. And also the major techniques that this group actually uses. All of that information is available here for you. Likewise, if you want to know more about the APT12 group, which is another very, very famous group, you get all of that information here on the APT12 page. You get all the information that's available here. Everything is being collated here. So how can you actually practically use this? So let's say that you discover a particular technique being used. So immediately what you can do is you can run a check on what are the groups that are likely using this particular technique. The MITRE ATT&CK framework actually identifies those groups for you. So from there, you can probably guess that, okay, it's probably APT12 that's using this particular technique, or it's the Leviathan group. That's how you can actually use this practically. So let's go back into the presentation now. For each technique and sub-technique, you'll also have a section on mitigations and detection. The mitigation section lists the number of things that you can do to lessen the impact or come out of an attack. For example, you can mitigate phishing attacks by making use of antivirus or anti-malware that can automatically quarantine suspicious files. You can use network intrusion prevention systems that can scan and remove malicious email attachments. You may desire to restrict web-based content, especially if those websites are not necessary for business operations. And of course, this point here about user training, this is a big piece when it comes to mitigating phishing attacks. Users happen to be the weakest link, and they need to be trained to identify social engineering techniques and phishing emails. What we can do now is let's go over each of the tactics briefly, and where possible, let's also bring up some techniques. This will give you a clear picture of how an attack might actually traverse through a network. So first up, you've got reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is the very first thing that a cyber criminal might do before launching an attack. Like we said earlier, it's one of the pre-attack tactics. Here, they try to actively or passively gather information about the potential target. This can include details about the organization, the network infrastructure, and also details about people who work there and the types of behavior that they exhibit. This step is very critical to the overall success of an attacker's campaign. The sophisticated attackers of today spend a considerable amount of time at this phase. Some of the techniques attackers could use to accomplish reconnaissance are what you see right here. Gathering victim identity information such as employee names and their email addresses, or they could gather the victim's network information such as IP addresses and domain properties. Then you have the second pre-attack tactic, resource development. After the initial research that happens during reconnaissance, adversaries try to build resources they can use for their nefarious activities. For example, they may purchase domains that can be used during their operations. Let's say that an organization is called Cello, and it's spelled C-E-L-L-O, and its URL is www.cello.com, that is cello.com. Attackers may make use of the malicious URL www.cell0.com with a 0 instead of an O. And this can be easily overlooked by human readers. The other techniques for resource development may involve the bad actors actually developing or even renting a botnet. A botnet is a network of compromised systems that can be instructed to perform a coordinated task, such as a DDoS attack. Yet another technique involves attackers developing specific capabilities. Before compromising a victim, adversaries may develop malware and malware components that can be used during targeting. Building malicious software can include the development of payloads, droppers, and backdoors. Adversaries may develop malware to support their operations, creating a means for maintaining control of remote machines, evading defenses, and executing post-compromise behaviors. So all of this comes under resource development. And then let's go into the first tactic of the actual attack framework, and that is initial access. Now, as the name suggests, initial access is all about an attacker trying to get that initial foothold into the network. There are 9 different tactics identified under initial access, and we went through that briefly earlier as well. One of the most common techniques is the drive-by compromise, using which adversaries may gain access to a system through a user visiting a website. In a drive-by compromise, what could happen is a user visits a website that has been spoofed by an attacker. From here, scripts automatically execute, and these scripts search the user's browser for vulnerabilities. An exploit code is then delivered to the browser. Another tactic is phishing, and we spoke about that briefly some time back. The second tactic is execution. With this tactic, the attacker tries to run a malicious code. Now, some time back, I spoke about how attackers of today are leveraging native tools to live off the line. Well, PowerShell is a very powerful tool that's readily available, and attackers can leverage this tool to achieve their objectives. Using PowerShell, adversaries can even execute a brute force attack or ransomware. Then you have the third tactic, you've got persistence. In this step, the attacker tries to maintain their presence in the network. This includes techniques that they use to keep access to systems even after restarts, change credentials, and other interruptions that could cut off access. One popular technique of persistence is creation of accounts. Imagine a scenario with me. Imagine a scenario in which an attacker has already compromised an account and got that initial access. At this stage, they may create a new account to maintain access to victim systems. This newly created account could be a local account or even a domain account. The fourth tactic is privilege escalation. With this tactic, the adversary will try to gain higher level permissions. Attackers will want to do this because they typically enter the network with unprivileged or lower levels of access. They'll then want to elevate their privileges to accomplish their goals. Examples of elevated access include local administrator, user accounts with admin-like access, and user accounts with access to specific systems. But how exactly do they do this? What techniques do they use for privilege escalation? One major technique for privilege escalation is group policy modification. Here, the attacker tries to modify group policy objects or GPOs. Because think about it, GPOs have access controls associated with them. The attacker tries to change all of this with this particular technique. The next tactic number 5, is defense evasion. With defense evasion, the attacker tries to hide their tracks and avoid being detected. The techniques used for defense evasion include uninstalling or disabling security solutions or impairing defenses by disabling Windows event logging. You may be aware that Windows event logs record each and every user and system activities such as successful and failed logons, process creations, group attribute changes, and a whole lot more. This is the underlying data that security professionals use to monitor indicators of compromise and detect threats. So what an attacker might want to do is once they get onto the network, they actually want to delete all of those event logs so that they can hide themselves in the network. This is probably one of the first things that an attacker does after initial access. Another major technique for defense evasion involves file deletion. Attackers may delete files left behind by the actions of their intrusion activity. Malware, for example, may leave traces to indicate as to what was done within a network and how was it really done. Removal of these files can occur during an intrusion or as part of a post-intrusion process. And by doing this, the attacker tries to minimize their footprint. And as you can see here, there's another major technique attackers use to hide their tracks, and that is called masquerading. Masquerading occurs when the name or location of an object is manipulated or abused for the sake of evading defenses and observation. This may include manipulating file metadata, tricking users into misidentifying the file type, and even giving legitimate task or service names to non-legitimate processes. And there are actually ways to do this. So an attacker gets onto the network, they actually run a very malicious process, and they can try and change the name there so that it kind of flies under the radar, and that is called masquerading. Renaming abusable system utilities to evade security monitoring is also a form of masquerading. Then you have credential access, tactic number 6. This is the stage of an attack when adversaries try to steal account names and passwords. Some of the techniques used for credential access are brute force, input capture, and man in the middle. A brute force attack happens when an attacker continuously tries to guess a password using a repetitive or iterative mechanism. Adversaries may use a small list of commonly used passwords against many different accounts to try and break in. Logins may be attempted with that password against many different accounts on a network to avoid account lockouts. Because attackers nowadays are very, very smart. They know that organizations use account lockout policies. And in case they keep trying to brute force a particular user account, after a set threshold, that account could get locked out. So they are well aware of that. So they will build that intelligence into whatever it is that they are using into their tools to make sure that a user account is not being attempted to be broken in more than a particular set of times. So they can probably get to know about the domain by domain enumeration. They get to figure out exactly what the account lockout policy is, and they will weave that into whatever tool that they are using for credential access. So that's how a very smart brute force attack can actually happen. An input capture happens when an attacker deceives the user into providing their credentials into what they believe is a genuine web portal. So from the user's point of view, they are just giving their username and password. They are trying to log in into a genuine website. But what is happening in the back end is the attacker has actually spoofed that website and is getting all of that information. Adversaries may install code on externally facing portals to capture and transmit credentials of users who attempt to log into the service. So like I said, a compromised login page may log provided user credentials before logging the user into the service. So that's how input capture can work. Discovery is the next tactic on the matrix, tactic number 7. With this tactic, the adversary is trying to figure out the intricacies of the organization's network environment. Domain enumeration is used by attackers to gain knowledge and plan how to act. Some of the things they attempt to discover are domain trusts, network shares, password policies, domain groups, and system information. And you might be surprised at how easy this is. There are readily available tools which can be downloaded online. And then all that you need to do is get that initial foothold and run those tools in an environment, even with not a lot of privilege. And an attacker can actually get a hold of all of this information, which they can then use in their attacks. It's very, very simple. Even a novice attacker can be able to do the discovery. Then you have the next tactic. It's called lateral movement. The adversary is trying to move through the network environment. For example, they may use internal spear phishing to gain access to additional information or exploit other users within the same organization. Internal spear phishing is a multi-staged attack where an email account is owned either by controlling the user's device with previously installed malware or by compromising the account credentials of the user. Adversaries attempt to take advantage of a trusted internal account to increase the likelihood of tricking the target into falling for the phish attempt. The cyber criminal creates an exact spoof of an established person. So let's say it's a person of authority, like the CFO of an organization or even the CEO. So, and these people have a relationship, a legitimate relationship with all of their employees, right? So by doing this, by spoofing that, their email addresses, the attacker gains trust to deliver the fraud. So it would look like it all comes from a very legitimate email. The sender address is in fact identical, but it is actually spoofed. And this is called internal spear phishing. Next up, you've got collection, tactic number 9. Put simply, this is the stage at which attackers try to gather data of interest to their goal. The MITRE ATT&CK framework identifies common target sources such as drive types, browsers, audio, video, and email. Common collection methods include capturing screenshots and keyboard input. Some of the techniques used are listed right here. They include an adversary searching local system sources such as file systems or local databases to find files of interest and sensitive data. Adversaries may also search for network shares on computers they have compromised to find files of interest. Another collection technique is this one right here. It involves the attacker actually compressing data. Compressing the data helps to obfuscate the data and minimizes the amount of data that is sent over the network. And then you've got command and control. In this stage of the attacker tries to communicate with compromised systems to control them. For example, adversaries may communicate using application layer protocols associated with web traffic to avoid detection by blending in with existing traffic. Commands to the remote system will be embedded within protocol traffic between the client and the server. Protocols such as HTTP and HTTPS are very commonly used, and we all use them. HTTP packets have many fields and headers in which data can be concealed. An adversary may abuse these protocols to communicate with systems under their control within a victim network while also mimicking normal expected traffic. So that's how command and control works. Tactic number 11 is exfiltration. Here, the larger technical goal is the stealing of sensitive data. And that's very obvious by the name, exfiltration. Techniques for getting data out of a target network typically include transferring it over the command and control channel or even an alternate channel, and may also include putting size limits on the transmission. You have several techniques here, such as automated exfiltration and exfiltration over USB. And then finally, you've got impact, which is tactic number 12. In this final stage, the adversary tries to manipulate, interrupt, or destroy the organization's systems and data. Account access removable, data destruction, defacement, and disk wipe are some of the major techniques used for impact. So there you have it. We just went over 12 different tactics that adversaries could use, different techniques within each tactic, and different sub-techniques within each technique. We also discussed about groups, mitigation strategies, and detection methods. Since all of this information is available at one place for you within the MITRE ATT&CK matrix, this framework will enable you to follow a structured approach to defending against threats. What we can now do is we can talk about how the MITRE ATT&CK framework can be used for efficient investigation through a SIEM solution. Furthermore, we can also see how incident management can be done for quick resolution. For this, let us now get into a working instance of Log360. So let me quickly open up my instance of Log360 and we'll see how the MITRE ATT&CK framework can be used in a SIEM solution. So here's my working instance of Event Log Analyzer, which happens to be the log management module of Log360. So here we go. So on the top here, so here is the dashboard, and on the top here, you've got the alerts tab. So let me quickly go into the alerts tab. And here's where you can actually set up alerts that conform to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So there are already a lot of alerts that are set up. So in case you want to set up a new alert, you can just go into add alert profile and you can actually set up an alert right here. So let's go back. So once an alert is set up, adversaries, for example, may use pass the hash techniques to move laterally within an environment, or adversaries could use the process injection technique for privilege escalation. So pass the hash is a technique for the larger tactic called lateral movement, and process injection is a technique for the larger tactic called privilege escalation. And attackers could actually be using this in organizations. Now, once an alert is set up, these alerts will show up here in the list of alerts. So imagine for a moment that you've already got those alerts set up. All that you need to do is then select particular alerts. And then you can actually add these alerts to the same incident by going over here to the top. So Log360 gives you the option of adding multiple alerts to one single incident. And this is going to be extremely crucial for efficient incident management. So all that you need to do is go into incident, and then you can create a new incident by going here. Just take a look at this page. So by doing this, you're not resolving alerts in an ad hoc basis, but actually resolving several alerts that can be linked to one incident. Also on this page, you can look at everything that's happening with this possible incident. All the evidences that have been collected from all the alerts associated with this incident can be seen right here. If a SOC analyst needs to build a comprehensive timeline of what really happened, they just need to look onto this page. Not just that, they can also add notes to this incident so that everyone within the team is aware of what's going on and can refer to insight from their colleagues. Because an incident might be worked upon by several different administrators. So you don't want them to lose the context whenever an incident is being worked on by another administrator. So you can actually add on notes so that that insight can be shared amongst the team. Now, incidents can also be assigned to particular technicians, and that can be done right here. So you can choose the administrator that needs to work on this particular incident right here. And as you can see here, the severity can also be chosen. It can be chosen as attention, critical, or trouble. This gives you the ability to prioritize the incidents, and the status of the incident can be updated over here. Not just updated, can also be monitored here. Is it open? Is it closed? Or is it still in progress? The write pane, well, I don't have any data right now because this is a very minimal wrap setup, but the write pane will give you more contextual information about this particular incident. So ideally, if all the data has been set up, you can actually identify the age of the incident, when that incident was set up, and also the actors involved. What are the entities that are associated with this particular incident, and who are the suspects? All of that information will be available for you under this actors section. You'll be able to see who are the users whose actions constituted, or led to this particular incident. All of that information will be available here. Now, from here, what happens is you'll also be able to see particular IP addresses that contribute to this incident. And if you want to investigate further, all that you need to do is copy the IP address that is going to be found here, and then head on over to the search tab to do your forensic analysis. So you've already copied that IP address. And then once you come here, you paste that IP address and hit search. All of that forensic analysis is going to be available for you. So let's see that. Let's imagine that you've just copied that IP address, pasted it here, and then hit search. All of that information will be available for you. And once this comes up, you can keep drilling down. For example, you can use the Elasticsearch option, and you can keep drilling down into whatever fields of interest. So here, I've just clicked on username, and here are all the usernames that have led to this particular log. And this way you can keep drilling down. Let's say that you are interested in in the actions of this particular user. You can keep drilling down. Just take a look. This is how the Elasticsearch works. Then let's say that you are interested in the processes that were created. Just go into process names. You see how this forensic analysis works and how it is all related to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So from there, looking at by getting all of the alerts based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, you're actually getting into forensic analysis all on one console. The other thing that you can do to get more information about this possible attack scenario is head on over to security analytics. That can be found by going over to the reports tab. And here under the drop down, you have the MITRE ATT&CK option. Just click on that and take a look at this page that opens up for you. On the top right here, you have the 12 different tactics used by adversaries as identified in this framework. We just went over all of these 12 different tactics. Now, each of these tactics will have analytics on the specific techniques associated with it, and that can be found on the left-hand side right here. Now, in the incident we just spoke about, like about 2 minutes back, we were speaking about a possible process injection that was employed. To get more information about such activities, you can go over to privilege escalation, because process injection is a technique within privilege escalation. So just choose a tactic, privilege escalation. And then here you've got process injection, and take a look at all of this information. So you get information about what was the actual process injection technique. All of that details are going to be available for you here in this report. Similarly, if you go over to lateral movement, which is another tactic, you can see information on pass the hash activity, which happens to be one of the techniques. So Log360 kind of breaks it down for you, what really happened. Another thing that you can do is automation when it comes to assigning technicians for your incidents. You can make use of incident rules for doing this. So for that, just go into the alerts tab. And here you've got incident. And here you can add an incident rule. What you can do here is you can give a name for the incident rule and a description for the rule. And here you have the rule criteria. For example, you can set this to alert profile. And let's say that you've created an alert for pass the hash activity. So all that you need to do is set alert profile, and you can choose alert profile equals pass the hash activity. That's the alert that you have created. And in case that's true, in case that's the criteria that's you're looking for, and that's true, you can assign it automatically to a particular technician. So you're not actually waiting for the alert to reach to you and then assign the technician. You can actually have Log360 take this decision for you because you have pre-configured it. From the alerts tab, there's one more thing that you can do here for intelligent response. You can also integrate with ticketing tools such as ServiceNow. So for that, just go here into more tools and go into ticketing tool integration. So here we've got the integration set up with ServiceNow. So once you set this up, the alerts you select can get automatically sent over to your service desk, and streamlined incident management can be done from there. Great. So that brings me to the end of my talk today. But before I let you go, I do have a couple of polls to run. These polls will be launched on your screen right now. So if you can take a moment to answer these questions for me, that'd be really great. So let me quickly go ahead and launch these polls right now. So you'll see two questions on your screen right now. How do you know Manage Engine Log 360? And do you want our product specialist to assist you with a free evaluation of the solution? So in a 40-minute webinar, in a 45-minute webinar like this one, there's only so much that I can cover. But in case your organization has specific use cases that you'd like to go, like us to take you through, we'll be happy to do that. Please let us know. So we'll just give it another 10 more seconds. All right, thank you so much for those responses. Now I've got one more poll to run, and this is about the session feedback. Let me quickly launch that poll. So this is about how you felt this webinar experience today. So we can take some moment to answer these 4 questions that you see on the screen. That'll be really great. And just as you're answering that, on behalf of Manage Engine, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out and being a part of this session today. You've been a lovely audience. I see a lot of questions have come through as well, and I'll be taking some time to answer those questions in the next 10 minutes. So yes, I'll still be online for the next 10 minutes. Please keep sending me your questions using the Q&A feature on your webinar panel. Thank you so much once again. And until next time, please take care.